infrastructure promotes social and economic development. However, thanks to climate change, the majority of Africa's existing infrastructure is not fit for its purpose. While Africa only contributes 3% of global greenhouse gas emissions, it remains vulnerable to climate change. The UN stated that Africa is the most vulnerable continent to climate change. This is because most of the economic activities in Africa, such as agriculture, are closely connected to climate. Africa has a complex and understudied climate system that is influenced by three main global ocean basins. Two of the most extensive land-based end-of-century projected decreases in rainfall are expected to happen in northern and southern Africa. Africa does not have the socioeconomic capacity to adapt to and alleviate climate change. Considering these factors, it's crucial for Africa to start laying out long-term plans that ensure the effectiveness of infrastructure despite climate change. To reduce vulnerability and increase the resilience of infrastructure in Africa, the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program, or AAAP, a body that actively promotes the adaptation of measures that mitigate against climate change, started two projects. The first, enhancing adaptation and resilience of national and urban infrastructure in Ghana, and the second, the leveraging of public-private partnerships for climate-resilient infrastructure. Ghana has been experiencing floods, storm surges, sea erosion, droughts, and landslides that have destroyed roads and disrupted economic activities in hydropower generation. The Global Center of Adaptation, GCA, and other relevant parties conducted a study and reported that by 2050, 19% of Ghana's road network, 54% of railway assets, 20% of seaports, and 17% of area assets are expected to be at risk of flooding in a high likelihood hazard scenario. Total damage to the road network due to floods may reach up to $4 billion. Road damages from floods may result in 12 to 14 million people having to travel more than 100 kilometers to access basic services. To reduce this risk, GCA and the government of Ghana, under AAAP, formed four strategic programs: Ghana Roadmap for Climate Resilient Infrastructure, Integrating Resilience into Infrastructure, Public-Private Partnerships, a Cross-City Adaptation Accelerator, and Innovative Nature-Based Solutions for Infrastructure Resilience. About 80% of priority infrastructure in Africa is incomplete and already failing at the feasibility stage. There is a need for strong public and private investment professionals to facilitate public-private partnerships contribution to the existing investment gap and climate adaptation via climate-resistant infrastructure. The GCA is working with governments and the public sector to incorporate climate adaptation into infrastructure PPPs. The Certified Climate Resilient Infrastructure Officer, or CRIO program, provides PPP practitioners with the best credentials for developing and financing climate-resistant private-public partnerships. This supports the integration of climate adaptation and resilience in their PPP project cycles. The GCA's Infrastructure and Nature-Based Solutions program in Africa will also allow the CRIO program to provide technical assistance and analytical support to assess and integrate climate resilience into PPP projects. This will work towards GCA's strategy of mobilizing $25 billion for the adaptation through the Africa Adaptation Accelerator program. According to AAAP, Africa's infrastructure needs about $130 billion to $170 billion a year, with an investment gap of over 50% to 60% of that amount. Unfortunately, the nationally determined contribution and national adaptation plans of several African countries are not getting sufficient resources. The AAAP's goal is that by 2025, Africa should have scaled up investments at the national and city level for climate resilient infrastructure in key sectors such as water, transport, energy, and waste management to at least $7 billion, and integrate resilience in up to 50% of new infrastructure projects. According to the 2015 report made by the World Bank, 4 interventions that could be employed early on are developing technical guidelines on integrating climate change in the planning and design of infrastructure, especially in climate-sensitive sectors. Second, promotion of an open data knowledge repository for climate-resilient infrastructure development. Third, establishment of an Africa Climate Resilience Project preparation facility. And fourth, launching of training programs for climate-resilient infrastructure professionals. This all depends on setting up an observatory on climate-resilient infrastructure development. The World Bank reports that despite the increasing frequency and intensity of extreme weather events in the continent, African governments are even taking steps to possibly back out of climate agreements in order to secure the availability of energy for the public while putting the fight against climate change as a lower priority. The World Bank recommended that fiscal instruments could provide the most effective solutions for relieving and combating climate change. However, if environmental tax reforms were to be implemented, it is projected to have an adverse impact specifically on low-income households.